Joseph Naso was an American serial killer who operated in California from the 1970s to the 1990s. He earned the nickname the Alphabet Killer because the first and last names of his victims begin with the same letter. For example, Roxane Rogers, Pamela Parsons. He was arrested in 2011 and, in 2013, was convicted of murdering 4 women and sentenced to death. Joseph Naso was born on January 7, 1934, in Rochester, New York. In his youth, he joined the United States Air Force and served in various parts of the country. After completing his service, he took up photography, specializing in photographing women, including models and dancers. Throughout his life, Naso moved frequently, living in New York, California, and Nevada. His acquaintances described him as a reclusive and strange person. He was married twice, but both marriages ended in failure. His ex-wife later stated that he had a tendency toward violence and cruelty. He also had a son, Charlie, who suffered from schizophrenia and spent most of his life in psychiatric institutions. The series of murders attributed to Naso lasted for more than 20 years. Most of his victims were women leading marginal lifestyles, including sex workers, homeless individuals, and drug addicts. The investigation officially linked Joseph Naso to the murders of 4 women. Roxane Rogers, an 18-year-old girl, was found dead near Fairfax, California. Her body was wrapped in a blanket, and there were signs of binding on her wrists. Carmen Colon, a 22-year-old woman, whose body was discovered in Port Costa County. She had been strangled, and evidence of sexual assault was found on her body. Pamela Parsons, a 38-year-old waitress from California. Before her murder, she was seen with an elderly man resembling Naso. Tracy Tafoya, a 31-year-old woman, whose body was found in Yuba City. Police also suspected that Naso might have been involved in the murders of young girls in Rochester in the 1970s, known as the Alphabet Murders. However, no direct evidence was found to confirm this connection. Joseph Naso was arrested in April 2011 at his home in Nevada when officers arrived for a routine probation check. He had previously been convicted of shoplifting during a search of his home. Investigators discovered diaries. He kept records of his crimes, detailing attacks, bindings, and murders of women. Photographs of victims. The images depicted women who were bound, partially undressed, or lifeless. List of 10, a note containing a list of potential victims along with their locations. One of the key pieces of evidence was a DNA match linking Naso to biological traces found on some of the victims' bodies. The trial of Joseph Naso began in 2013 in California. He represented himself, refusing a lawyer. During the trial, he denied his involvement in the murders, claiming that the evidence was fabricated. Despite his claims, the court found him guilty of 4 murders. The jury voted for the death penalty, which was officially handed down in August 2013. Joseph Naso is currently incarcerated at San Quentin Prison in California, awaiting execution. Given the lengthy appeals process in California, he will likely die in prison before the sentence is carried out. Rodney James Alcala was an American serial killer, rapist, and pedophile who was active from the late 1960s to the late 1970s. He became known as the dating game killer after appearing on the television show The Dating Game in 1978. While already being an active criminal, Alcala was convicted of murdering 8 women but investigators suspect his actual number of victims could exceed 100. He was known for his extreme cruelty. He tortured his victims, leaving them unconscious, only to revive them and repeat the torture. Rodney James Alcala was born on August 23, 1943, in San Antonio, Texas, to Raul and Ana Maria Alcala in 1951. His family moved to Mexico, but shortly after, his father abandoned them. His mother then relocated with the children to Los Angeles in 1961. Alcala enlisted in the U.S. Army, but his service was short-lived. For years later, he was discharged after being diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. After leaving the military, he enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, where he studied photography. This passion later became a crucial part of his criminal activities, as he lured women by posing as a professional photographer. Rodney James Alcala was born on August 23, 1943, in San Antonio, Texas, to Raul and Ana Maria Alcala in 1951. His family moved to Mexico, but shortly after, his father abandoned them. His mother then relocated with the children to Los Angeles in 1961. Alcala enlisted in the U.S. Army, but his service was short-lived. For years later, he was discharged after being diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. After leaving the military, he enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, where he studied photography. This passion later became a crucial part of his criminal activities, as he lured women by posing as a professional photographer. First known attack. Alcala's first recorded attack occurred in 1968 in Los Angeles. He kidnapped an 8-year-old girl, Tali Shapiro, by luring her into his car and offering her a ride. He took her to his apartment and raped her, but the murder was prevented by a bystander who called the police. When the officers arrived, Alcala managed to escape, leaving the girl barely alive. He then fled to New York, where he hid for several years under the name John Berger. Series of murders 1970, 1979. Over the next decade, he committed murders in different states. Using his charisma and good looks, he posed as a photographer, convincing women to pose for him. Some of the victims: Jill Barkham, 1977, found in Los Angeles, initially believed to have been killed by another serial killer, the Hillside Strangler. Georgia Wickstead, 1977, raped and beaten to death in her home. Charlotte Lamb, 1978, strangled in the laundry room of an apartment complex. Jill Parton, 1979, murdered in Los Angeles. Alcala's DNA found on her body. Robin Samso, 1979, her murder was key to solving the Alcala case. Alcala was arrested in July 1979 after the murder of 12-year-old Robin Samso. A witness identified him as the man who had taken photographs of the girl before she disappeared. First death sentence, 1980. In 1980, Alcala was sentenced to death. However, the sentence was overturned in 1984 due to procedural errors. Second death sentence, 1986. Alcala was tried again in 1986 and again received the death sentence. However, in 2001, DNA evidence linked him to additional murders, and the trial began anew. Final sentence 2010. In 2010, the court found him guilty of 5 murders and again sentenced him to death. Photos and new investigations. After his arrest, hundreds of photographs of women and children were found on Alcala. Some of them were his victims. and the identities of others are still unknown. Authorities believe the real number of his murders may exceed 100. Rodney Alcala died on July 24, 2021, at age 77 in San Quentin Prison in California. He remained on death row, but due to lengthy abuse and poor health, his sentence was never carried out.